Since last we talked about TV, um, well, I found two very good things that I watched, and one not so good that I'll get to. But I'll start with the good news first. You guys smell that? I smell a mystery. That's right. You guys know I'm a fan of almost everything Holmes. Sherlock Holmes, Mycroft Holmes, John Holmes. Well, now Enola Holmes, bitch. I'm, of course, referencing Enola Holmes 2, the sequel on Netflix. Did you guys watch this by any chance?
Is John Holmes a porn star?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you guys might remember, but almost certainly don't. The first Enola Holmes movie on Netflix, I was a little mixed on because I felt the mystery kind of took a backseat. It was more of like a coming of age movie that centered around that rather, and the mystery wasn't really. It was just kind of in the background, and I liked that movie okay. But I like this one more because I think that they got her introduction out of the way in the first movie. This one could concentrate a little more on the mystery. So I like that aspect of it. You get a lot more Henry Cavill as Sherlock Holmes. I mean, he was in the first one, but not nearly as much. And so you get those two interacting, and it's just like a really charming, fun movie. I'm hoping they make a third one. I really enjoyed it. I will say, so they also, because it's, of course, in the Sherlock Holmes universe, this movie introduces their Moriarty. And I get Moriarty's like a good character, but I don't like that like Sherlock Holmes doesn't really have a rogues gallery. It's just Moriarty basically. And like even when you think it's someone else, it's actually Moriarty like pulling that other person's strings. I'm like, fuck, give him a rogues gallery, right?
Moriarty always seems to like he like does he like always escapes, or
Yeah, he always escapes.
he's always like one step ahead.
It's just like I don't know. It.
Who's that guy on MacGyver that he always thought it was
Oh yeah,
dead?
Murdoch.
Murdoch. Yeah.
He's like, yeah, MacGyver, like Murdoch would like get in a situation where it's like he had to have died. Like there's no fucking way he didn't die, and then he'll just like come back to life in another episode. You'll be like, how?
He fell off like a 3,000-foot cliff.
Into like fire, and then he was like, tigers ate his body, or so we thought. But no, I just is Sherlock Holmes in the public domain?
Probably.
I might have to write him a couple more villains because fuck, he needs them. But yeah, man, Enola Holmes and the sequel, well worth your time on Netflix, I think. So after that, it put me in the mood for a mystery. I love a good mystery. And so I was like, damn, I want another mystery show, but like I didn't really have one that I'd seen. But I was flipping around Amazon Prime, and I happened upon a thumbnail of a mystery show I'd never heard of called A Private Affair. Now this show is actually a Spanish language show, and so like I started it, and at first it had like the English like dubbing. And it was fucking awful. So I was like, okay, I can't do this. So I actually turned on the Spanish language track and watched the subtitles, and that was a lot better. Trust me, if you do it, that's the way I recommend.
A private affair.
A Private Affair. So it's set. Actually, I don't know if it ever says exactly where it's set. I think like the 1940s, probably, or so, around there. Anyway, so the show like centers around this woman who's like. She like comes from kind of a wealthy family. Like she's, I guess, an heiress, you would say. And like her father was a detective, and so she kind of wants to follow in his footsteps. But of course, like society doesn't allow women to be like detectives. It's one of those things. So she like basically like. Reads a lot of like crime magazines and stuff, and even like in this show like fashions like some of her own like detecting equipment, and like uses chemistry and stuff. I mean, a little bit of that, but basically she ends up as these shows do, she happens upon a murder, a stabbing. And so she ends up getting involved in this case, even though society doesn't want her to. But she ends up. It's a fun show. But she ends up.
Mamacita, no detecto. I don't know why I had to say that.
She ends up kind of convincing the family butler, who's played by probably the only person you might recognize.
Michael Caine.
That would be cool.
It's
but
always Mike.
He's always the butler.
no, I believe his name's Jean Renault. You probably the only thing the thing he's probably best known to American audience for is he played Leon in that movie Leon, aka The Professional.
Yeah, he's been in a fair amount of stuff.
Right. And he's really good in it too. And I mean, it's a breezy show, maybe like 8 episodes or so. I watched it in like a weekend, and it's really like a fun show. I highly recommend it, and I think it just came out like this year, so I'm hoping like they make more. But even if they don't, it didn't leave on. It wasn't like on a cliffhanger, you know. But I really had fun with it. You know, the interesting thing about that Jean Renault is like I was like, isn't he French? And this show's in Spanish, and like his little bio on Amazon said like he was born in like Casablanca, which is in Africa, to, I believe, Spanish parents, but then when he was 16, like they settled in France. So like I'm thinking he's like probably speaks like 3 languages. But I just always thought he was a Frenchman. But yeah, that show was really good. So now you guys smell that? Smells like shit. Now, as you guys know, I signed a deal with the devil where I have to watch every superhero show ever made. But luckily, there's no time frame on it, so I can take my time.
Take it to the grave.
So this only took me probably like a year and a half. I finally finished the final season of Supergirl. And whoo boy, let me tell you, I mean, saying that they phoned this season in is I think doing a short change to the phrase phone, because this was rough. I mean, I think Supergirl as a show is always somewhat flawed, but I found like a lot of the earlier seasons, you know, completely watchable and at times even enjoyable. But man, this last season, whew, it was rough. It like. I mean, that's why it took me so long to get through it. Like, I watched some and I was like, oh, I got to take a break from this shit.
I'm burning out in general on superheroes.
Man, imagine if She-Hulk was like much, much worse and 6 times as long.
It's hard to do. It's hard to do.
And you would be getting the final season of Supergirl. And plus, like, I think, as happens to these shows, I think their budget was probably slashed too, because, man, did the effects look bad and cheap. Holy shit. I don't. Yeah. I do not recommend the final season of Supergirl, to say the least. But you know what? Another one checked off my list. I think I have to be in rarefied air to be a guy that watched all of
that is
Supergirl.
some determination. Like,
It really is.
I watched some of Supergirl. I watched some of season 5, and I was like, man, this is rough. Like, if you got to what season you said? How
I
many?
think this was 6.
Man, like, if the writing continued to go down as it did.
Oh, it did. It did.
You might have lost a few brain cells watching that.
And I had so few to work with. Man, yeah. Whew. That was an endurance one. I'm glad that's over with. The only other thing I wanted to mention, not really anything I watched, but R.I.P. to the voice of my childhood, Kevin Conroy, voice of Batman.
Batman.
Man, only, I think they said 66 years old. I think he like died of cancer or something. It's like, man, it sucks. But yeah, shout out. Of course, my favorite show, Batman the Animated Series. He was the voice of Batman, and he also did the Arkham video games and a lot of like, I think he did quite a few of like, I mean, at least a number of those like, you know, straight to home video, like DC animated stuff too.